The Olympic Mountains hold their secrets close. For 9 years, the disappearance of a father and his young daughter was one of them. A ghost story whispered around campfires, a cold case gathering dust in a file cabinet. Until now. Until a hiker, caught in a storm, stumbled upon an object that should not have been there. An object that held a silent scream, a final message from a man who knew he was running out of time. This is not a story of a tragic accident. This is a story of a truth buried deep in the earth, and the shocking confession that finally brought it to light. The mountain kept its silence, but the camera did not. And what it revealed changed everything. Watch this video until the end to find out what really happened. It was a crisp Tuesday in late September, the kind of day that felt like a final golden embrace before the harsh grip of winter. The text message arrived just after 10 in the morning, a final fleeting glimpse of happiness that would haunt a family for years to come. Liam, a wildlife photographer who found his solace in the untamed wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, texted his brother, Ethan, from deep within the rugged Olympic Mountains. A picture accompanied the message showing Liam with a broad, genuine smile, his arm wrapped around his 3-year-old daughter, Chloe. Chloe, with her shock of curly blonde hair and eyes as blue as a summer sky, was perched in a small cobalt blue backpack carrier, grinning back at the camera. The caption read, "Getting a few last shots before the rain starts. She loves the mountains. We'll be home Thursday. Love you, man." Ethan replied instantly with a quick thumbs-up emoji and a promise to grill steaks for their return. He put his phone down, completely unaware that this simple message and this final image of pure joy would be the last he would ever see of them. By Saturday, Liam and Chloe were not back. By Sunday, a low-grade anxiety had begun to fester in Ethan's gut. By Monday, a full-scale search and rescue operation was underway, involving park rangers, local sheriff's deputies, and countless volunteers. The authorities meticulously combed the sprawling, unforgiving mountain range, but they found nothing. No broken twigs, no footprints, no sign of a struggle. It was as if they had simply dissolved into the mist. Liam, a man with a reputation for his spontaneous, sometimes prolonged photography trips, had never once failed to check in. This time, there was only a deafening silence. The case went cold. The beautiful photograph of father and daughter, the vibrant blue backpack carrier, and the serene mountain backdrop became the symbol of a devastating mystery. Over the next 9 years, the case became a local legend, a ghost story whispered around campfires. Investigators offered theories. Maybe Liam had been battling some personal demons. Maybe he left the state to start a new life, or perhaps something terrible had befallen them both. But every new lead was a dead end, every tip an empty promise. The family was left to mourn what might have been, clinging to the fading hope that one day the truth would emerge from the profound silence. For 9 long years, the blue backpack carrier with a little girl's happy face inside remained an empty symbol of a family's enduring pain. The mountains held their secrets for 9 long years, silent sentinels over a tragedy that had faded from headlines but not from memory. The mountains, indifferent to human sorrow, had absorbed the story of Liam and Chloe, burying it under layers of rock and time. Then, in the late summer of the 9th year, a new chapter began to unfold. It started with a man named David Shaw, an experienced hiker whose peace was found in the solitude of the wilderness. He wasn't a thrill seeker and had no specific destination. David simply sought the quiet communion with nature that only the high country could provide. He moved with the unhurried rhythm of someone who understood the mountains, his eyes scanning the terrain not for landmarks, but for the subtle shifts in geology and the hidden pathways of wildlife. A sudden, fierce squall, an unexpected burst of wind and rain, caught David by surprise. He quickly sought shelter, his practiced gaze settling on a deep, narrow crevice in a granite outcrop, a natural alcove that promised temporary refuge. As he squeezed into the cramped space, his hand brushed against something alien to the rough rock. It was smooth, hard plastic, partially obscured by accumulated pine needles and fine dust. Curiosity, a fundamental trait of any explorer, compelled him to investigate. He knelt, carefully clearing away the loose earth. The object was unmistakably man-made, and as more of it emerged from the shadows, a faint, faded blue color became visible. His heart gave a sudden, hard thud against his ribs. It was a child's backpack carrier, the kind with a small mesh window and a sturdy handle. The color, the size, the very improbability of its presence in such a remote, inaccessible spot sent a chill through him. He knew, with a certainty that bypassed logic, that he had stumbled upon something profoundly significant. The image of the missing father and daughter, a story that had haunted the region for years, flashed through his mind. David did not touch the carrier further. He understood the gravity of his discovery. With trembling hands, he pulled out his satellite phone, its signal often unreliable in these remote canyons. After several attempts, a connection was established, and he relayed his coordinates and the chilling details of his find to a dispatcher. Within hours, a small team of park rangers and local sheriff's deputies, guided by David's precise directions, arrived at the desolate location. The scene was immediately secured. Yellow crime scene tape, a stark contrast to the muted greens and grays of the mountains, was stretched across the crevice, marking the boundary between nature's indifference and human tragedy. The case was assigned to Detective Mia Vance, a sharp, methodical investigator in her early 30s. She had joined the sheriff's department only a year after Liam and Chloe vanished, and the Dinger case, as it was known, was a frustrating monument to unresolved grief, a thick file gathering dust in the cold case unit. Mia had read through it countless times, always feeling the weight of the unanswered questions. Now, with the discovery of the blue carrier, a flicker of something new ignited within her. This was not a random piece of trash. This was a direct link, a tangible piece of the puzzle that had eluded everyone for so long. Under the careful supervision of a forensic team, the blue backpack carrier was meticulously removed from the crevice. It was surprisingly intact, protected by its sheltered location, though 9 years of mountain weather had bleached its once vibrant blue to a dull, sun-faded hue. Back at the temporary command post, set up in a remote ranger station, Mia oversaw its examination. The carrier was empty, at least at first glance. No toys, no blanket, no obvious signs of Chloe. A wave of disappointment rippled through the small team. But Mia was known for her meticulousness, her almost obsessive attention to detail. She ran her gloved hands over every seam, every curve of the plastic, and then she felt it. A slight unevenness, a subtle bulge beneath the inner lining of the carrier's base. It was almost imperceptible, designed to be hidden. With a small, sharp knife, she carefully slit the fabric. Inside, nestled in a shallow cavity, was a small, waterproof pouch. Her breath hitched. This was not part of the standard carrier design. This was deliberately concealed. With a mix of anticipation and dread, Mia unzipped the pouch. Inside, wrapped in a layer of thin plastic, was a small, compact digital camera. It was an older model, the kind that had been popular around the time of the disappearance. The camera was caked in dried mud and fine grit, its lens scratched, its casing showing signs of prolonged exposure. It looked like a lost cause, a relic too damaged to yield any secrets. Yet a fragile hope emerged. This was a piece of electronic equipment, a potential witness to the past. The camera was immediately transported to a specialized forensics lab hundreds of miles away, a facility equipped with the most advanced data recovery technology. The technicians there, accustomed to working with severely damaged devices, offered a grim assessment. The chances of recovering any data were slim. The moisture, the extreme temperatures, the sheer passage of time, all conspired against a successful extraction. But even a single image, a fragmented video clip, could be the key that unlocked 9 years of silence. Mia waited. The wait was agonizing, each passing hour stretching into an eternity. The blue carrier, now empty, sat in an evidence locker, a silent testament to the enduring mystery, while the small, battered camera held the fragile promise of finally revealing the truth. The phone call from Dr. Evelyn Reed came on a Friday afternoon, a sharp, insistent ring that cut through the usual hum of the sheriff's department. Detective Mia Vance answered, a knot of anticipation tightening in her stomach. Evelyn's voice, usually calm and measured, carried an undeniable urgency. The camera, she explained, had yielded its secrets. Data had been recovered, and what it revealed was far from a simple camping trip. Mia listened intently, her pen poised over a notepad, scribbling furiously as Evelyn detailed the recovered images, and most crucially, the final, unsettling video clip. The description of the barbed wire fence and the obscured industrial containers sent a jolt through Mia. This was not the wilderness Liam had set out to photograph. This was something illicit, something hidden. The GPS coordinates, meticulously extracted from the camera's metadata, were the most critical piece of information. They provided a precise location, a digital breadcrumb trail leading directly to the anomaly. As soon as the call ended, Mia sprang into action. She immediately pulled up detailed topographical maps of the Olympic Mountain region, inputting the coordinates Evelyn had provided. The digital map zoomed in, pinpointing a remote, rugged area deep within the mountains, far from any marked trails or established campgrounds. It was a section of the wilderness that was officially designated as protected, yet also held a vague, almost forgotten history of past logging operations. The map showed no existing structures, no roads leading directly to the site, only a network of faint, overgrown tracks that hinted at long-abandoned activity. Mia then cross-referenced the coordinates with various state and federal databases. Her search initially yielded little. The area was indeed remote, largely untouched, and listed as a wilderness preserve. However, a deeper dive, using specialized environmental and historical records, began to paint a different picture. She uncovered old reports, dating back several decades, of a small, short-lived logging venture in the precise vicinity. The venture had been shut down due to environmental violations, deemed too costly to remediate, and eventually forgotten. But the satellite imagery, recent and high resolution, revealed anomalies. Faint disturbances in the tree line, subtle discolorations in the soil, and indistinct shapes that, when digitally enhanced, bore a chilling resemblance to the vague forms seen in Liam's final video. The pieces began to click into place with a horrifying clarity. The abandoned logging site was not truly abandoned. It was being used. The obscured containers, the barbed wire, the deliberate concealment, it all pointed to one grim conclusion. This was an illegal dumping ground for toxic waste. Liam, a photographer seeking inspiration in nature, had stumbled upon a clandestine operation, a dark secret hidden in the heart of the mountains. His camera, meant to capture beauty, had instead captured evidence of a crime. The implications were staggering. The entire 9-year investigation had been based on a false premise. Liam was not a fugitive, nor was he a victim of a random accident. He was a witness. And whatever had happened to him and Chloe was directly connected to this hidden, dangerous site. The case was no longer a cold file about missing persons. It had transformed into a potential homicide investigation, intertwined with serious environmental crimes. The weight of this realization settled heavily on Mia. The vast, indifferent mountains had not simply swallowed a father and daughter. They had become the silent accomplice to a far more sinister act. The simple blue backpack carrier, once a symbol of childhood innocence, now stood as a chilling testament to a profound betrayal of the wilderness and the lives it had claimed. With the precise coordinates in hand, Detective Mia Vance embarked on the meticulous task of reconstructing Liam's final week. This was no longer a search for missing persons. It was a forensic excavation of a life, piecing together fragments of time to understand a hidden truth. Mia immersed herself in Liam's digital footprint, scrutinizing phone records, bank statements, and social media activity from the days leading up to his disappearance. She sought patterns, anomalies, anything that deviated from his known routine. Liam, a creature of habit when it came to his art, typically followed a predictable rhythm when venturing into the wilderness. He would research specific landscapes, plan his routes, and inform his family of his precise whereabouts. Yet, the camera's GPS data revealed a stark departure from this norm. The final images and video were taken far off any established trail in a section of the mountains he had never previously visited, according to his extensive travel logs and journals. This suggested an unplanned detour, a spontaneous exploration that led him to the hidden site. Mia theorized that Liam, ever the curious artist drawn to the untouched beauty of nature, had simply wandered off his intended path, perhaps seeking a unique vista or a new source of inspiration for his photographs. He was known for his adventurous spirit, his willingness to delve deeper into the wild than most. It was during one of these excursions, she believed, that he stumbled upon the illicit dumping ground. The sheer remoteness of the location, the deliberate concealment of the site, spoke volumes about the efforts made to keep it secret. Liam, with his keen eye for detail and his deep respect for the environment, would have immediately recognized the disturbing anomaly in the pristine wilderness. The sequence of photographs on the recovered camera supported this reconstruction. Initial images showed the familiar beauty of the mountains, typical of Liam's landscape photography. Then, a subtle shift occurred. The focus narrowed, capturing specific details of the terrain, unusual rock formations, and then the faint, overgrown track leading away from the known wilderness. Liam was no longer merely observing. He was investigating. His artistic eye had transformed into that of an accidental documentarian. He had begun to capture evidence, meticulously recording the barbed wire, the obscured barrels, the signs of environmental contamination. He was not just a passerby, he was a witness. The decision to hide the camera within Chloe's backpack carrier was a chilling testament to Liam's quick thinking and desperate situation. Mia considered the implications. Liam must have realized the danger he was in, the gravity of what he had discovered. He knew that if he were caught, the evidence would be destroyed. The backpack carrier, a seemingly innocuous item, an extension of his daughter's presence, would be the last place anyone would think to search for incriminating evidence. It was a brilliant, heartbreaking act of foresight, He had gambled on the emotional impact of a missing child, betting that the carrier would be treated with reverence, perhaps even overlooked entirely, rather than subjected to a thorough forensic examination. He understood that in the chaos of a disappearance, attention would be on the people, not on a discarded object. He had entrusted his daughter's carrier with the truth, a silent message from beyond the grave, hoping that one day someone would find it and listen. The realization sent a cold shiver down Mia's spine. Liam had not simply vanished, he had been silenced, and he had used the last moments of his life to ensure his discovery would not die with him. The weight of the new evidence, particularly the GPS coordinates and the chilling video footage, pressed heavily on Mia Vance. She knew that to truly move forward, she needed to confront the past, to challenge the long-held assumptions that had shackled the Liam investigation for nearly a decade. Her first step was to seek out Detective Arthur Harrison, the lead investigator on the original cold case. Harrison had retired 2 years prior, a man burdened by the unresolved mystery, carrying the Dinger file as a personal failure. Mia found Harrison in his quiet suburban home, a place filled with the comfortable clutter of a life lived far removed from the sterile intensity of police work. He greeted her with a polite, if somewhat weary curiosity. He had heard about the discovery of the blue carrier, of course, but assumed it was merely a sad epilogue to a case he believed was already solved, albeit tragically. He offered her coffee, his eyes, though kind, holding the distant, knowing look of someone who had seen too much. Mia wasted no time on pleasantries. She laid out the new findings with a calm, professional demeanor, starting with the recovery of the camera, then the painstaking data extraction, and finally, the shocking contents of the last video. She watched Harrison's face carefully as she spoke, observing the subtle shifts in his expression. At first, there was a flicker of interest, a professional reflex. But as she detailed the barbed wire fence and the industrial containers, a deep skepticism began to settle over his features. "A hidden camera, detective?" Harrison finally interjected, his voice low, laced with a familiar weariness. "And a video of some drums?" Liam was an artist. He was known for his eccentricities. He could have been filming anything, a new art project perhaps. His words carried the weight of years of entrenched belief, the narrative of Liam as a troubled man, possibly responsible for his own disappearance, firmly rooted in his mind. He had spent years building that narrative, defending it against the family's pleas. Mia anticipated his resistance. She had spent days dissecting the original case file, understanding the logic, however flawed, that had led to the initial conclusions. She knew the depth of his conviction. "Sir, the GPS coordinates place that footage precisely. It's not just some drums. It's a secluded, deliberately hidden area far from any public access, and the satellite imagery from around that time shows disturbances consistent with industrial activity, not just an artist's whimsy." She pushed across the table a series of enhanced satellite images, highlighting the subtle anomalies. Harrison picked up the photographs, his brow furrowed. He studied them, his eyes, once sharp and analytical, now showing a hint of the doubt Mia sought to sow. He remembered the frustrations of the initial search, the vastness of the mountains, the lack of any concrete leads. The theory of Liam as a runaway, or worse, a perpetrator, had been a convenient, if painful, explanation for an inexplicable void. It had provided a sense of closure, however grim, for a case that offered none. "And the backpack carrier?" Harrison asked, his voice softer now, a trace of genuine curiosity replacing the skepticism. "Why hide a camera in a child's carrier?" "Because he knew it would be found," Mia replied, her voice firm. "He knew it would be treated with care, possibly overlooked as evidence, and that it would eventually lead someone back to the truth. It was a desperate act of preservation, a final message. She explained her theory, the artist's quick thinking, the realization of danger, the chilling foresight to entrust the evidence to the most innocent of objects. Harrison leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the window, lost in thought. The comfortable silence of his home was now filled with the echoes of a decade-old mystery. He had always dismissed the family's insistence on Liam's innocence as understandable grief. But the new evidence presented with such precision and logic began to chip away at his carefully constructed certainty. The image of Liam, the troubled artist, the potential fugitive, began to blur, replaced by a new, more unsettling possibility, that of a man who had stumbled upon a dangerous secret and paid the ultimate price. The weight of 9 years of misdirection, of a truth buried deep within the mountains, began to settle upon him. The new theory, stark and chilling, galvanized the sheriff's department. Detective Mia Vance, now officially leading the reactivated case, assembled a specialized team. This was no longer a search and rescue operation, nor a simple missing persons inquiry. This was a potential crime scene, hidden deep within a protected wilderness, demanding a meticulous and cautious approach. The team included environmental crime specialists, forensic technicians, and experienced mountain rangers who knew the treacherous terrain. Their mission: to locate and secure the illicit dumping ground pinpointed by Liam's camera. The journey to the coordinates was arduous. The remote location, far from any established trails, required a multi-hour trek through dense forests and over steep, rocky inclines. The air grew heavy with anticipation, a palpable tension among the team members. As they drew closer, guided by handheld GPS devices, the subtle signs began to appear. Faint, almost imperceptible tire tracks, long overgrown, weaving through the underbrush. And then, a faint, metallic scent carried on the mountain breeze, alien to the clean, crisp air of the wilderness. Finally, they arrived. The scene was exactly as Liam's final shaky video had depicted, yet far more disturbing in person. A makeshift fence, constructed from rusted barbed wire and decaying timber, crudely encircled a section of the forest. It was an ugly, unnatural scar on the pristine landscape. Beyond the barrier, partially obscured by hastily erected tarpaulins and overgrown foliage, stood dozens of large industrial barrels. Many were corroded, their surfaces stained with unidentifiable residues. The ground beneath them was discolored, the soil barren and devoid of life, a stark contrast to the vibrant growth just outside the fence. This was not merely a dump. It was a wasteland, a testament to a callous disregard for the environment and the law. The environmental specialists immediately began their assessment, donning protective gear. They took air samples, soil samples, and carefully documented the contents of the barrels. The preliminary readings confirmed Mia's grim suspicions. The site was saturated with highly toxic chemicals, likely industrial waste, illegally disposed of under the cover of the remote wilderness. The sheer scale of the operation suggested a well-organized, long-term endeavor, not a one-off incident. This was a deliberate, calculated act of environmental devastation. As the forensic team meticulously processed the site, searching for any trace evidence, Mia's focus narrowed. She walked the perimeter, her eyes scanning for anything that might connect Liam or Chloe to this desolate place. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no discarded personal items, no clear indication of what had transpired. The dump site was a place of concealment, designed to erase traces, not to leave them. The silence of the mountains, once serene, now felt heavy with unspoken secrets. The grim reality settled upon Mia. Liam had not simply disappeared. He had stumbled into a dangerous criminal enterprise, and in doing so, had sealed his fate and that of his 3-year-old daughter. The site was not just a dumping ground. It was, in all likelihood, the place where their lives had tragically ended. The blue backpack carrier, found miles away, was a desperate final act of a father trying to expose a truth that cost him everything. The investigation had finally found its true north, no longer chasing shadows but confronting a tangible, horrifying reality. The discovery of the illegal dumping ground was a critical breakthrough, but it was only half the equation. The site provided a motive and a location, but the bodies of Liam and Chloe remained missing. The grim task of finding them fell to specialized search teams who painstakingly combed the treacherous terrain surrounding the dump, focusing on ravines, sinkholes, and any area that could have served as a clandestine burial site. Days turned into a grueling week, the hope of finding survivors long extinguished, replaced by the somber determination to bring them home. Then, on a Tuesday morning, a search dog, trained to detect human remains, signaled in a deep, overgrown ravine approximately half a mile from the dump site. The ravine was steep, its floor choked with fallen trees and dense underbrush, a natural crevice that offered perfect concealment. The team descended cautiously, their movements slow and deliberate. What they found was not a grave, but a natural burial, a tragic consequence of the mountain's unforgiving nature. Partially covered by rockfall and accumulated debris lay the skeletal remains of an adult male. There was no sign of Chloe. The scene was immediately secured, and a forensic anthropology team was dispatched. Dr. Lena Hansen, the lead forensic anthropologist, arrived with her team, her expression grim but focused. The recovery process was painstaking, almost reverent. Using small tools, brushes and sieves, they carefully excavated the remains, documenting every bone, every fragment of clothing, every piece of debris. The dry mountain air had preserved the skeleton remarkably well, though soft tissue was long gone. The clothing, what little remained, was tattered and faded, but consistent with hiking attire. Back at the county medical examiner's office, Dr. Hansen began her meticulous examination. The skeleton was identified through dental records as Liam Dinger. The initial visual inspection revealed no obvious signs of blunt force trauma, no bullet holes, no clear indications of how he had died. The bones were intact, silent witnesses to a decade of mystery. It was a frustrating lack of evidence, a silence that mirrored the 9 years of unanswered questions. However, Dr. Hansen was known for her relentless pursuit of answers, even from the most unyielding evidence. She focused her attention on the few remaining fragments of fabric found with Liam's remains. They were small, discolored pieces, clinging to the bones of his sleeve and trouser leg. Under high magnification, she noticed something unusual embedded within the fibers. A fine, almost imperceptible dust, a crystalline residue that shimmered faintly under the light. It was not natural soil, nor was it typical mountain grit. This was something foreign, something introduced to the fabric. A sample of the dust was carefully collected and sent to a specialized materials analysis laboratory. The question was simple. What was this substance, and where did it come from? The answer, when it arrived days later, sent a jolt through the entire investigation. The report confirmed the presence of a highly unusual compound, a specific chemical signature consistent with the toxic waste found at the illegal dump site. It was a precise match, an irrefutable link. The implications were profound. Liam had not died from a fall or a random act of violence. He had been exposed to the toxic chemicals, likely at the dump site itself, or during an attempt to escape it. The presence of the substance on his clothing, even after 9 years, was a silent scream, a direct physical connection between the victim and the crime scene. It confirmed Mia's theory with chilling certainty. Liam had stumbled upon the illicit operation, and in doing so, had become a victim of the very poisons he sought to expose. The search for Chloe, however, continued, now with a renewed, desperate urgency. The mountains had given up one secret. They still held another. Calvin Thorne's carefully constructed composure had finally shattered. The scientific evidence, the irrefutable link to the toxic waste, had stripped away his layers of denial. Yet, even as the walls closed in, he maintained a chilling silence, his eyes darting to the door, a desperate, unspoken plea for his brother, Marcus. Mia Vance, observing his subtle shift, knew where the true vulnerability lay. She had seen it before. The powerful, calculating mind, protected by a loyal, often weaker, accomplice. Marcus Thorne was brought in hours later, picked up from a seemingly innocuous office building in a nearby city. He was a stark contrast to his older brother, less polished, more nervous, his eyes constantly shifting. He had none of Calvin's cold detachment, only a simmering anxiety that betrayed his inner turmoil. Mia and Harrison opted for a softer approach, a psychological strategy designed to exploit the cracks in his facade. They didn't immediately confront him with the full weight of the evidence. Instead, they spoke of the weight of secrets, the burden of complicity, the endless nights of looking over one's shoulder. Marcus listened, his face pale, his hands clasped tightly on the table. He fidgeted, his gaze occasionally meeting Harrison's, then quickly dropping. He was a man trapped, caught between a powerful brother and a crushing conscience. The mention of Liam, the artist who had simply wanted to photograph the mountains, seemed to weigh heavily on him. Mia spoke of Liam's daughter, Chloe, her small, innocent face from the recovered photographs, the blue backpack carrier, a symbol of a life brutally cut short. The emotional hook, the image of the lost child, was the trigger. Finally, Marcus Thorne broke. It began as a whisper, a choked confession that slowly, agonizingly spilled into the sterile interrogation room. He spoke of that fateful day 9 years ago. Liam, he explained, had indeed stumbled upon the illegal dump site. He had been filming, documenting the barrels, the contaminated soil. Calvin, always vigilant, had seen him. A confrontation had ensued, a furious argument between the meticulous artist and the ruthless businessman. Liam, righteous and unyielding, had threatened to expose them. In a desperate, unplanned struggle, Liam had been pushed, falling against one of the corroded barrels, rupturing it. The toxic chemicals had splashed over him, the corrosive agents immediately taking their toll. He had died quickly, collapsing on the contaminated ground, his body convulsing. It was not a deliberate murder in the traditional sense, Marcus insisted, but a tragic, desperate act of self-preservation by Calvin, a panicked reaction to a threat that could unravel their entire empire. Then came the heartbreaking truth about Chloe. Marcus recounted how, in the chaos of Liam's collapse, the 3-year-old Chloe, startled and confused, had wandered away, drawn by a distant sound or a flash of color. In the panic of the moment, with Liam dead on the ground, Calvin had ordered Marcus to dispose of the body. Marcus, terrified and desperate to avoid exposure, had hastily dragged Liam's body to the nearby ravine, burying it under rockfall and debris. He had then returned to the dump site, only to find Chloe gone. They had searched frantically for a short time, but the fear of being discovered, of the full extent of their illegal operation being exposed, had overridden any sense of humanity. They had made the cold, calculated decision to abandon the search, to prioritize their secret over the life of a child. They had assumed she would eventually succumb to the elements, her tiny body lost to the vast, unforgiving mountains. Marcus then detailed the cover-up, how Calvin, with his twisted genius, had orchestrated the narrative of Liam as a runaway, planting subtle, misleading clues to throw off the investigation. The blue backpack carrier, a cruel irony, had been left in the crevice as a final, desperate act by Liam, a silent testament to the truth. Marcus, consumed by guilt, had carried the burden for 9 years, haunted by the image of the little girl lost in the mountains. His confession, raw and painful, finally brought the full, brutal truth to light. Liam had died exposing a crime, and his daughter, Chloe, had been left to perish, a tragic casualty of greed and fear. The mountains, silent witnesses for so long, had finally given up their darkest secret. Marcus Thorne's confession, raw and agonizing, did not end the investigation. It merely shifted its focus to its final grim chapter, with Calvin Thorne now in custody, maintaining a defiant silence. The full weight of the sheriff's department turned to the search for Chloe. Marcus, consumed by a guilt that had festered for 9 years, provided the crucial details, a map of memory etched by fear and regret. He described the area where Chloe had last been seen, a small, overgrown clearing near the dump site, and the direction she had wandered, drawn by some innocent distraction. The search operation was massive, a coordinated effort involving specialized K-9 units, drone teams, and experienced mountain rescue personnel. The terrain was treacherous, a labyrinth of dense underbrush, hidden ravines, and ancient rock falls. The passage of 9 years had transformed the landscape, obscuring any faint traces that might have remained. Yet the teams worked with a grim determination, fueled by the heartbreaking truth of Marcus's confession. They were no longer searching for a missing child. They were searching for a final resting place, a tiny grave in the vast, indifferent wilderness. Days blurred into a grueling cycle of meticulous grid searches, each hour a testament to the enduring hope that Chloe's remains could finally be brought home. The weather, often unpredictable in the mountains, remained clear, offering a window for the intensive operation. The drone teams, equipped with high-resolution thermal cameras, systematically scanned every inch of the designated area, their silent eyes searching for any anomaly, any disturbance in the natural landscape. The K-9 units, their senses honed by years of training, worked tirelessly, their handlers following every subtle change in their behavior. Then, on the 3rd day of the renewed search, a K-9 unit signaled in a small, concealed depression, barely visible beneath a tangle of thick bushes and fallen branches. It was a natural hollow, a place where debris tended to accumulate, offering a perfect, albeit accidental, burial site. The ground was carefully excavated, revealing layers of compacted leaves, soil, and small stones. The atmosphere was tense, hushed, as the forensic team worked with painstaking precision, their movements slow and deliberate. And there, nestled deep within the earth, they found her. The tiny, delicate skeletal remains of a child, no more than 3 years old, lay curled in a fetal position, as if seeking comfort in the embrace of the earth. The remnants of a small, faded pink dress clung to the bones, a heartbreaking splash of color against the somber earth. There was no sign of trauma, no indication of violence. Chloe had simply succumbed to the elements, lost and alone, a tragic casualty of a crime she could not comprehend. The mountains had finally given up their last, most devastating secret. The recovery of Chloe's remains brought a profound and aching sense of closure to the Dinger family. It was not joy, but a release from the agonizing limbo of not knowing. The truth, however brutal, had finally emerged from the shadows. Dental records provided a swift and certain identification. Liam and Chloe, father and daughter, were finally reunited, not in life, but in the grim certainty of their shared fate. Calvin Thorne, facing an ironclad case built on his brother's confession, the irrefutable forensic evidence, and the undeniable link to the illegal dump site, was convicted on 2 counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Marcus Thorne, his conscience finally clear, received a lesser sentence in exchange for his full cooperation, a life forever burdened by his complicity and the memory of a little girl lost. The mountains, once a symbol of beauty and freedom, now stood as a silent, solemn monument to a hidden crime and the enduring power of truth.